When Marcus bought his dream house in a quiet suburban neighborhood, he thought he'd finally escape the noise of the city. But peace didn't last long. Within days, members of the local HOA began showing up, demanding fees, dictating rules, and insisting he follow community standards. The twist? Marcus wasn't even part of their HOA. One morning, after calmly saying, "I'm not under your HOA," a board member called the cops on him. What they didn't know was that the police they called weren't coming to arrest him. They were coming to protect him. Wait a second. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Marcus Bryant was a 34-year-old cybersecurity consultant who'd worked his way up from almost nothing. After years in a cramped apartment, he finally purchased a modern 2-story home in a wealthy neighborhood just outside Dallas. It was quiet, lined with manicured lawns and picture-perfect mailboxes. But Marcus noticed something right away. He was the only black homeowner on the entire street. At first, he brushed it off. He waved to neighbors, kept his lawn trimmed, and minded his business. But soon, letters started showing up in his mailbox, unsigned and passive-aggressive. "This property must adhere to HOA guidelines," one said. Another warned, "You're expected to pay your community dues." Marcus rechecked his deed. His property was explicitly not within the HOA's jurisdiction. He thought it would be a simple misunderstanding. It wasn't. What started as neighborhood reminders soon turned into surveillance, confrontation, and something darker than he'd ever imagined. Every morning, Marcus noticed the same woman standing across the street, clipboard in hand, jotting down notes as she stared at his house. Her name was Linda, the HOA president, and she made it her mission to enforce standards. She approached him one afternoon as he watered his lawn. Without greeting him, she snapped, "You can't have that color fence here," Marcus replied politely. "Ma'am, my house isn't under your HOA," her face hardened. "That's not how this community works," she hissed, walking away. Days later, Marcus found a printed notice taped to his door. Violation, unauthorized property modifications. The same evening, a man in a pickup truck idled in front of his home for 20 minutes before driving off. Marcus installed cameras and logged everything. He tried to stay calm, but the tension grew. When he caught Linda photographing his backyard through a gap in the fence, he finally confronted her. Calmly, he repeated, "You're trespassing. I'm not part of your HOA. That was the breaking point." The next morning, 2 HOA board members marched up his driveway with phones in hand. "If you don't comply, we'll call the police," one threatened. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He said, "Go ahead." Minutes later, they did. The sound of sirens echoed down the street as neighbors peeked through curtains, expecting to see another troublemaker taken away. Linda stood with folded arms, satisfied. But when the police cars pulled up, Marcus's expression didn't change. The officers stepped out. 2 uniformed men who immediately walked over and shook Marcus's hand, because what Linda didn't know was that Marcus wasn't just a homeowner. He was also a security consultant for the police department, responsible for upgrading their cyber systems. The officers had known him for years. Linda's smirk vanished as one of them turned to her and asked, "Ma'am, are you aware that you've just made a false report?" The silence that followed was deafening. The same neighbors who whispered about Marcus now watched, stunned, as the story flipped in an instant. The HOA board faced an official warning for harassment and false reporting. Linda resigned weeks later, but her departure didn't erase the damage. Marcus's story went viral after his doorbell camera footage, showing the confrontation and the officer's arrival, was shared online. Thousands commented on it, some angry, others inspired. Marcus didn't post it for revenge. He wanted people to see how easily bias hides behind rules and policies. He still lives in the same house. His neighbors have grown friendlier, quieter, more cautious. But every time he sees an HOA newsletter slide into his mailbox, he remembers that day, the moment prejudice was unmasked by truth, and he asks himself and the world one question. Why does equality still feel like rebellion when all you're doing is living where you belong? Which country and city are you watching from? Take care.